As we were just saying, Marty will not be with us today. He's in San Diego. And I gave up trying to prepare for these a long time ago. So I'm glad Mary is with us.
Yeah.
You can keep us, and I trust everybody can keep us moving around.
Mary, you're muted. You're muted, Mary. Mary.
Yeah, okay, here I am.
You're in charge. Marty's not here today.
Yeah, I just came back from abroad, what was it, Thursday. So if I say any nonsense, it's jet lag, it's not me.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. What?
If I'm not very clear, it's not me, it's jet lag.
Jet
Because
lag.
I just from 10 hours flying. So, no,
Oh,
10
boy.
hours flying. Yeah. So,
Where did you go?
we went to North Spain and Portugal.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
For me, yeah. Well, my feelings towards Spain and Jews is very.
You're muted again.
You muted.
You're muted, Mary. There you go.
Muted. What I'm saying is that for me, Spain is the beginning of something that, I mean, we always were in trouble, but Spain did a really good job of kicking us out and started moving east and east and east. And as we say on Pesach, in every generation, someone wants to kill us and God saves us. So that's Spain, you know, the Inquisition. And the only date in history that I remember, which is 1492, it's the expulsion day and America's discovery, or whatever word you use for that.
Yeah, hi Mary. Yeah, hi Mary.
Hi.
What you just said, oh, someone's always trying to kill us. Why do you think that is?
I'm not going to get into that, Michael, because you want so much that we'll talk about anti-Semitism, and I think that we should have a special course on that. I really do. You guys need to talk to Rabbi Norman about it.
He's putting something. He's putting something together. He's working on it.
Yeah, it's very difficult, Michael. I mean, you know, the theories are just off the roof. Why it happens?
Yeah, I'm just responding to what you said.
Yeah, I know. It's just the issue of being different, or someone thinks that we are different. You know, in one of the churches that we went to visit, they still had. Elaine, you cannot hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. In one of the churches that we visited, you know, they have Christians also believe in the Hebrew Bible. So they put all kinds of figures, including our prophets and Adam and Eve and the Akedah. They tried to kill Isaac. One of them is very, very interesting, and Michelangelo also dealt with that. It's a figure of God.
I'll only be gone in like 10 minutes. I just need to make a quick call.
Excuse me?
It's okay. I got her muted.
Okay. even Michelangelo also did that. And I want to clarify something. If you recall, in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance, the figure of Moses, of Moshe, they give him to hold the 10 Commandments, the tablet, so you know that it's Moshe. So they put on him horns. You recall that picture of Michelangelo? There you go. Now hold that for a second, Larry, because this is interesting. They don't put what you see here, because you're holding Marc Chagall.
I'm good. I'll look it up.
Okay, so I think it's a painting of it says in Hebrew, and Moshe, his face, Karan, which is, it was lightning. It was had a face of light that was coming from him. Now the word Karan, you know that there are no vowels in Hebrew, can be converted into the word Keren. Karan, Keren. Now Keren is horns, but Karan is, his face was lightning. It had light on him. So they translated the word Karan as Keren, as horns. Larry, what do you think?
Yes, the cover, it's Marc Chagall, Moses receiving the tablets of the law. And let me
Now
see.
look at the picture that Larry is showing. Do you see it's not a little lower? That's it. It's not horn. It's like a light coming from him that's surrounding. Now, when they did the translation of horns, that was a big, big issue for us, Michael, because if you recall, Jews were portrayed as having horns and a tail in one of the white, you know, the things that if Moshe has cairns, has horns, then all of us have them. So this is a Middle Ages, what I'm talking, 1400, horrible, horrible way of depicting us. And it came back, as you well know, in the time of Hitler, depicting us as mice or as pests or pestilent, and bringing all the sorrows of the world. Everything bad that happened in the world was our fault. And so the beginning, that it's the modern, I would say, the modern issue of expulsion and anti-Semitism at its best at that time. And after the expulsion from Iberia Peninsula, we started dispersing all over the world until we got to Russia and Poland, and then we got to the Arab countries and to Morocco and Tunis, Bulgaria, Turkey, etc. That's the Sephardic congregation of Jews, and to the east, to Germany, is the Ashkenazi. In Hebrew, or more probably in Aramaic, the word Germany is Ashkenaz. So when they arrived in Germany, that's started calling Ashkenazi and creating a little different. I just was in Portugal, and we stay another day to see the Jewish community there, and a beautiful synagogue that they have, beautiful, gorgeous. But the synagogue is built in a Sephardic mode. Does anyone know what's the difference between an Ashkenazi arrangement of synagogue and a Sephardic one? The Sephardic one, very wisely in Miri's mind, they put the bima in the center, and the people surround the bima. They bring from the ark the Torah and put it in the center, because that's the center of the synagogue. And everyone sits facing it. not in row like in a movie house, but around it. So there are also Ashkenazi Jews there. And guess what? They had to build another little synagogue underneath for them to pray. And you know the story about the guy in the island that builds two synagogues, one that he goes and one that he doesn't go. So even us are separated, and it's hilarious to me. But anyway, so we still differentiate between Ashkenazi and Sephardic and Christians and Muslims, and everyone is different. And everything bad that happens in the world is one group or another.
Rabbi Mary,
We claim, yes.
Yeah. I was just going to interrupt, sorry. A couple of years ago, I was in the Azores, which is a Portuguese colony in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, very isolated. And it's part of where the Jews, part of the diaspora, because the Jews that were kicked out of the Portuguese mainland, some
Right.
made the Azores, and there's a synagogue that had just been restored. It's the tiniest, almost like a dollhouse synagogue. And it's definitely Sephardic because the bima is right in the middle and the seating is all around. But there are still about 20 Jewish families living on Puerto Delgado, that big city. So it's really interesting. I took a lot of photos, and I even made up a greeting card with the photos of the Puerto Delgado synagogue on it, which I can send around to anybody who wants.
Yeah. That's wonderful, but it just shows how much we were all over the place. And
Yeah.
it's Sephardic because the word Sefarad means Spain. So
Right.
all the Jews that came from Spain, they didn't go to the east of Europe, remained Sephardic.
I thought
Came
the Ashkenazi originated with the Khazars in Russia.
Right, they got there, but they got after they were kicked out from Spain.
Sure, but before they picked up the German connection, I thought that the Khazar tribe in Russia, who had dominated a big chunk of land in Western Russia, that the Ashkenazi Jews came out of there.
Yeah. The Jews went to the Netherlands, which is the closest, and then they immigrated to Germany. And in Germany, they held very important jobs and status. Now, in Poland, the king there wanted to create a better place. So he called the Jews from Germany, some that were politicians, doctors, lawyers, bankers, to come to Poland. So they started being in Poland, and the same happened to Russia. But at that time, they didn't like us, and there were the pogroms in the villages, etc., etc. Michael, the issue of us and anti-Semitism is just unbelievable.
Yeah,
It's
well, the
just
reason I don't want to interrupt you, but let me just get this in. You see, I understand in the Middle Ages what was going on, but as we went on time up until today, why there's not a balance of this. In other words, Jews are not. There's very little negativity today connected with Jews. Jews are docile people. They're not aggressive. They're studious. They add a lot to humanity. Take Israel. There's so much good things that come out that help humanity in medicine and science. And so that's what I'm getting at. What is going on here that there's not, instead of anti-Semitism increasing, why isn't it decreasing? because of the fact.
Well, Michael, that's for another day. And
I
like
know that's for another day, but that's what I'm just answering.
Yeah.
I know it's someone's going to say that, but thank you. But that's what I'm also getting at. And it's not meant to discuss it now, Ruth Ann. It's just something for the future.
Yeah.
And I just want to plant this in the minds of people that are listening to me. That's all.
Okay.
No,
Well,
and you're right, and I don't know, but there are several things. You know, we brought the pandemics to the world, and one of the things I'm going to say very openly is the Catholic Church that did not erase the fact that we killed Jesus. They did not admit that that's nonsense. They did not admit that. I think that the last Pope, even Francis, who's from my mother country, from Argentina, is not doing a very good job in that direction. So that really ignited a lot of people.
And we're also responsible for 9/11, which is absolutely crazy.
okay. Gail had something she wanted to say. And then we need to get back to our topic.
I'd like to just maybe end the conversation by saying this. Maybe the real lesson for us is to remind us to treat other minorities better. Okay? Because we've been there. So let's be more mindful of people of color, thank you, and immigrants, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the real lesson for us.
And I
And
think that's a good
Palestine.
lesson.
Okay.
And
And let's-
Palestinian. Okay, Ruth Ann, why don't we go to the book of books?
Yeah, well, let's start out. First of all, for those people who were late in coming in, there's nothing wrong with Marty. This weekend or coming up is the unveiling for Sue's mother's stone. So they're in San Diego. And I am definitely not as prepared as Marty is. I've tried in the past. I read over some of this stuff. I like our commentaries much better than the commentaries I read about. So I'll tell you, I'm totally unprepared. David, do you want to go ahead and give us your poem? And we
Yes,
can
I
get
do.
started?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Today's poem will be from Walt Whitman, one of my favorites. And when I heard the learned astronomer, he's sitting in a lecture, when the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I sitting heard the astronomer where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon unaccountable I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself in the mystical, not moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars.
Thank you, David. Does somebody want to do the opening prayer for studying Torah? Don't look at me because I can't. Miri?
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה.
Yeah.
Who
I've
bless
only
us
Yeah.
to soak in the words of the Torah.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay. According to Michael, we're on 25:1. Is that where everybody has?
25:1 sounds good to me.
Amy, you're shaking your head. Amy, does somebody have a?
I had my bookmark further in, but it could be in error. I was around 25:17, but maybe
25:1.
we'll go with 25:1.
Go with 25:1. Okay. Does somebody want to start reading?
Yeah, I'd
like
be
I said,
happy to begin.
and read, and like I said, I'm not gonna really stop you. Read as far as you think you want to start discussing,
Okay.
which just
I
could be
will,
2
I will
words.
start. Yeah. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe Lemor, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they take for me an offering of every man whose heart maketh him willing, he shall take my offering. And this is the offering which he shall take of them: gold and silver and brass and blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair and ram skin dyed red and seal skins and acacia wood. Here we get to Arizona, and acacia wood, oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, stories to be set for the ephod and for the breastplate. And he let them under me a sanctuary where I may dwell among them. According to all that I show thee, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the furniture thereof, even so shall ye make it. I think this is
Okay,
pretty
why don't you
important.
stop? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just one of the words, one of the things that it's very crucial is verse 9. It's a very short one. Can you repeat it, please, in English?
Yeah, according to all that I show thee, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the furniture thereof, even so shall ye make it.
It's start and they make to me, maybe it's 8.
And 8 says, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. And one of the things that I
Okay.
like about this is that the original tabernacle was portable. It went with
Mhm.
the people and they carried it along with them. I don't know if there are any portable tabernacles right now, but I think that's so important that the very first one, as large as it was portable.
That's right. And later on, there is a description of how to make it so it will be portable. It's quite amazing. But what I want to address is, and they make me a temple, and I dwell among them. What does that mean?
Mary?
Gail?
I have a question, Mary. In my translation, it says, and I shall tent among them. And tenting to me
What's
sounds
the word? And I shall what?
tent among them. You know, a tent you live in, a tent.
Okay, I tent among them. Okay.
I like that.
Now,
Is that a
yeah,
good translation or not?
no.
No.
The problem with that is the grammar of Hebrew. Okay, first of all, and they make me a temple. They make me a temple, but let's go to the last word. And I lived, and I was among them. Now, the word among in here means I was among them. God is among the community, among all of you, among all of us. So God is not in a certain place or connected with one person, but is, or she is, or they is among them. But in Hebrew, it says, and they will make me a temple, and I dwell inside them. Okay, regard this translation. and I dwell inside them. Make me a temple, and I dwell inside them.
Okay.
Yeah, done.
Don?
Yeah, inside, yeah, my translation says among them. Would you say inside them means the same thing, Rabbi Mary?
No, no, because betoch is inside. So
Okay.
one explanation will be, we have Ruth and we have Miriam, we have Gail, and we have God, and He's going to be inside them, which will be among them. But in Hebrew, betocham is inside them. So what does that mean? Inside them.
So, okay,
Yes.
Marcia? Marcia was,
Yes. Well, I say, and I like this better, and I may dwell among them, that he's going to be a part of them.
There'll be what?
And they're going to be, I don't know if you call it a community.
Marcia, you need to repeat what you said. I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them.
Well, among is an English word that they put there, but the real word is inside them.
okay. Okay.
Okay.
Grace, wait a minute. I think David had his hand up.
I think that Rabbi Mary just hit the nail on the head, because where does God dwell? He dwells here. He dwells within us. He dwells in our house. He dwells in our observatory. He dwells in our hearts. And I think that's the key of that passage.
Okay, Grace?
Thank you. That I'm just kind of repeating the same measure. Well said, Rabbi Mary and David. In the beginning of these verses, it talks, in my translation, they have the word hearts. Whose heart so moves him? Whose heart? So the people's hearts is what God is after, right? To be within their hearts. I'm just stating it that way because that's English for my understanding and perhaps others, but that's how I'm seeing and feeling this verses 1-9. I want to reside within amongst your hearts, all of you.
Okay, Don?
Yeah, I have a problem with that, the difference between in and among, because in the construction of that verse, it says, and let them make me a sanctuary. Okay, the sanctuary is the place where I assume God is going to reside, that I may dwell among them. And I read that as I would dwell among them in my sanctuary, which is how I read it.
Okay.
Rather than in each individual heart, which I understand what you're saying, but the way I read that verse is that God is going to dwell in the sanctuary because it's in that verse, and then and the sanctuary will be among the people. And also, if I may just add a little bit, it's interesting that the design of the structure is meant to be carried on long poles, because we know they had wheels in those days because the Egyptians had chariots, but they're doing it the hard way. Schlepping. That's where schlepping got started.
Schlepping.
Now, Don, you have a problem there, because the word sanctuary is in singular, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I lived among, even if you use the word among, I live among them. That's plural. So if
Yeah.
there is one temple and I'm going to live among them, then it needed to say, make me a temple and I live inside it. But it doesn't say that. It says, make me a temple and I'm living even among or inside. Okay? In Hebrew is inside, but I'll take the among, which is plural.
Okay, Michael, you had your hand up, and then Gail.
Yes, Rabbi Mary, is there any possibility that in this situation, that in them and among them can be seen as one and the same in this particular situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Right.
If
Okay.
you want among them, take among them. It's part of the community. I'm going to live among Michael and Gail and Amy and Grace. I'll be there among them.
Okay,
And
Gail?
but you can also say inside them.
Okay, Gail?
I was just going to say, if God created everything, he's in everything and not just us. I mean, we're so egocentric, we think the world revolves around us and everything was made for us, and etc. So if God is everywhere, then he's in everything, not just us. So I think Mary's explanation really clears up that. The word is inside, not just around.
Okay, Larry?
Okay, going to the beginning of 25 with the fundraising, from those, every man whose heart makes him willing, you are to take my contribution. So there was a commitment from people, not all of them. And I think those that were predisposed towards joining this movement and accepting, they were the ones who received blessings.
That's a very good point. We have not discussed the beginning of this chapter, because the one that we are discussing is very dear to Rabbi Miri. So that's why I dropped it up. But we'll go back to that because it's a very important thing that Grace talked about it and you're talking about it. But then, so let's go back to, and they made me a temple. They made me a place of either word sacredness, of, the noun of sacred, of holiness. And they'll make me a place of holiness, of separation. That's what Mikdash. Now, Rabbi Zalman, Rabbi Eshel has a book called, it talks about making Shabbat as a temple. Now, the word temple again is not the word that we want, because the word Mikdash, Kadosh, sacred, holy, that's what the word Mikdash means. It's a building that is holy. And by being holy, is separated from all the other buildings that you dwell into them, houses and so forth, is a place that is separated, is special. So what he wants, she, they, the dynamic, wants you, us, and they made me a place of holiness, and I'm going to live inside them. We still have a little problem with this, but the word betocham, inside them, does not change what's written in Ivrit, in Hebrew. He lives inside, as I think David was talking about. It could be inside them, and it could be among them. That word addresses both of them. And now I can say, as Grace and Larry were talking from the beginning, that's what heart, the heart that they refer to, is a holy place inside you. It's a holy, separated place, if you want, although Gail brings up the issue of he or she or they living in every place, inside
Right.
every place.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah, just one final point from me. It's demonstrating that I will live inside you and among you.
Exactly. Exactly. The word can refer to both of them. Both of them, among and in.
Okay, Gail?
Now, question, Mary. So today we still have an ark in our temple, okay? But we don't think of God as residing there. We think of the word of God residing in the ark, correct? I mean, that would be,
right.
That's the symbolism now, is that it's the word of God that's residing there.
Well, the tendency of all of us, you know, religious or not religious, if you ask them, what's the holy place in which God resides? They're going to say the synagogue. And in the synagogue, the ark. But we assigned that place, and we assigned the ark, and we assigned the menorah, and we assigned the scroll as holy. We designed that. Because you have, in Hebrew, ark and closet is the same word. So all of us have closets at home, and none of them we said, oh, that one is holy. I'm going to open it on a Shabbat.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, you in the ark you have the word of God, but also when you go into a synagogue, you are also addressing God when you pray. You are addressing God, and I think that's what that synagogue, when you go on Shabbat or Friday night service, that's what you're doing. When you're going to Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, you got the same thing, but you are definitely addressing God when you go to the synagogue.
Yeah, you decide. But let me ask you, and the Baal Shem Tov said, now what if you go to Mount Lemon and go among the trees? Can you address God there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You can address God any place.
Right. But we decided that this building that you built for God is going to be, you know, all week you work and you don't have time and you don't go to Mount Lemon. So on Shabbat, I'm going to assign this place in which you come, not just to eat the bagels, but to pray. But it's a designation. It's you decided that this building is for praying. But I can pray anywhere, you said. And I agree with you. Because Gail told us God is everywhere.
Okay. Don?
Yeah, just following up on that, Rabbi Mary, in the history of the Jews, the two great temples were the place where everybody came to worship. And worshiping consisted of animal sacrifices. And that was like for hundreds of years. And then the first temple was destroyed, and then Cyrus allowed the Jews to rebuild it. And then that was destroyed again by the Romans. And then the second temple went up, and the sacrifices and central worship resumed. And then that one was destroyed. And then after that, that's when rabbinical Judaism started, and there was no temple. So the rabbis had to come up with a new system that would allow prayer to continue without either the sacrifices or the temple. And it didn't. So isn't that what brings us to where we are today, where we just have hundreds, if not thousands, of synagogues scattered around?
You said the word now. When the temple was destroyed, what did we do?
Which one? Second one or the first?
You said, well, the rabbis had to figure out what to do. So what?
Yeah, after the second temple was destroyed, then then the rabbis. Then there were different groups of rabbis, there, Sadducees and so on. They all had their own ideas about how to pray and what Judaism was. So that's how they get the desert island with the two temples on it. But it seems to me that where we are now is very different than what we're reading about at this time, and was different. It's just a different universe until Roman time.
Right. So how do we resolve that problem? We don't have a temple. So all the blessings and all the prayer disappear.
Or there's a new system.
Right. And what's that system?
What's the system? Well, I don't know if it is a system, but there's local temples, local synagogues.
Right. That's the solution.
Okay.
Okay.
Larry?
Larry.
I'd like to address that. The synagogue is a gathering place that even though we can do individual prayers, we also have the tradition of a minyan, where you need, originally it was defined as 10 men, but a community worship. And that, I think, is such an important part of Judaism.
That's exactly correct. For those that wanted a gathering place, the rabbis and we resolved by creating places of gathering. And that's the word in Hebrew, Beit Knesset. That's the Beit, the house of gathering. You're right, Larry, but one thing never came back. What is something that we did in the temple and we don't do in any synagogue?
We
sacrifice
animals, yeah.
Amen, yeah. We don't sacrifice. And we're going to go, according to the super duper Orthodox, we're going to go back to sacrifices when the third temple is going to be built. Because that's the only place that to sacrifice. By a place of gathering, we invented synagogue, which is a place. And you can do, you have this beautiful Ramada outside. It's outside, it's in the den. You can say, this Shabbat, instead of gathering in, the weather is so beautiful, let's gather under the Ramada. Would it work?
Yes.
But sacrifice was the central idea of the temple, the main temple. I mean, that's what you did. You went and you killed animals, and that the destruction of the second temple was exactly coincident with the start of Christianity, because the original Christians were all Jews, And so, when Christianity started, that was the final sacrifice, the sacrifice of Jesus. That's it. You don't need to do it anymore. There's no temple, there's no sacrifices. Let's move on. But of course, since then, it's all got distorted. And, we got us and them and the rest of it. But I just think that the temple the loss of the temple basically reinvented Judaism.
Yeah.
It changed.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I buy into your reinvent.
Okay. Gail.
Absolutely.
I was thinking in lieu of sacrifices of animals, thank goodness that's done. We now do donations to the quote temple. We do sacrifice of our time to the temple. So we're still doing that, just in a different form. Perhaps, yes, maybe.
Can I say a word?
Will you call Ruthann?
What? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was typing up a message. Marty.
Would you call?
What?
Amy.
Would you call
Amy.
who speaks now?
Amy.
Amy. Okay. If Michael says Amy, it's Amy because Michael's hand is up.
I
Yeah.
didn't have my hand up.
Okay, then
It's
Michael, go ahead.
Marsha and Michael.
Marcia had her hand up.
I like
Okay.
this.
I'm not doing a very good
sentence.
job of multitasking here.
I like. Can
Yes,
you hear
you
me?
are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Marcia.
No?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. I like that we're spending so much time on this one sentence because this women's a book that I read, their thoughts, there are 4 or 5 meanings what this line means. And it starts with the word sanctuary. The term emphasizes the tabernacle's holiness. Then the key statement anticipates the purpose of a tabernacle. The verb comes from a root, which is from dwell, means to inhabit or live someplace, in contrast to the indication of moving presence, not tied together or fixed location. The latest concept from the same root is interpreted many times, or in the midst, the people. Some language helps negotiate the tension between the freedom of God to be everywhere and the need of humans to have tangible, I can't talk, wait a minute. To have tangible evidence of God's accessibility.
You introduced the word in the midst, and you introduced the word sanctuary instead of temple. And I thank you for that, because sanctuary comes from the word, I believe in, and please correct me, anyone, from sanctus, which is holy. Am I right? Check it on the dictionary. But yes, and the tension that we have in Judaism is one that I talk about, our duty to the community and the need for community and the personal. For example, when you say the Shema is personal. In English, you won't know because it's the word you shall. And you don't know if you is wayal or it's one. in Hebrew is very clear. The Shema and you shall love, it's about one person. But we pray, and many of the things that appear here, like in the beginning, to give a donation is for everyone. So that's a problem that we have in the translation to English, that when the word you comes up, we don't know if it's many or one. And here, the entire thing is, and they make me a sanctuary, and I'll be in the midst, or I'll dwell inside them. So when you want to translate among, fine with me. And if you want to translate inside them, means inside each one of us. And that's when Grace and I believe Larry were talking, or David were talking about, that's what God is, here, wherever you want. That's a very important notion that has been believed for a long time. And that's one of the rabbis done, that one of the rabbis of Hasidut introduced. You can pray anywhere, and God is in each one of us. Now, if you want to buy into that, fine. If you prefer to do among them, fine. You know that this interpretation is open to each one of us. The beginning of this chapter is the difference between when you give a donation to, like, this is what I do, Doctors Without Borders, or to the IRS. I don't give them a donation. I give them what they want. So in the Torah, we have both things. In this case, is about donation. How much? What you feel in your heart. Grace said that. How much I give. But when I have to give, and we have it in the Torah, because we need to give money for the Levites and for buy stuff, etc., it's a tax. And you don't give tax according to your good of heart. You give tax as the law commands. And the issue of heart is a very important one. That's what people felt at the writing of the Torah, that's your goodness, your conscience, your willingness to help comes from your heart, which is interesting. And just in brackets, please, don't get into it. Our mind, our cerebral, our mind did not exist at that time. They didn't figure out that most of our work is done inside this place. So they talk about the heart, they talk about the kidneys, they talk about all kinds of things that I won't go into that. But please, each one of you decide if God is among us, if God is in a synagogue, since we determined that. And Michael, if the word of God is in the synagogue, then the word of God is not somewhere else. That's a question. And what else I wanted to say, I don't remember. But if you believe that God is inside you, amen, among you, amen. I don't contest or quarrel.
About Michael, then Gail.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Yes, sacrifice. I want to pick up where Gail was speaking about sacrifices, and as Jews, we're sacrificing very often to God. Every Shabbat, we we obey God's commands and to keep the Shabbat in different ways. We do not do what we would do during the week. Many things, and that's a sacrifice to God. On Yom Kippur, we don't eat. That's a big sacrifice to God. We don't eat, we don't drink, and this occurs. This goes, and there's certain a day or two during the year where Jews fast besides Yom Kippur, I believe, and so there are sacrifices that are ongoing with the Jew, especially in the Orthodox. It's going on all the time.
Gail?
I just ran across something interesting in women's commentary. It says the tabernacle should not be compared to a synagogue. Okay, it was not a house of worship. It was off limits to all but the upper echelons of the priesthood. Instead of being a place of communal worship, it was conceived of as an elaborate and costly residence for a divine presence. So that's another thing about when the temple was destroyed. We went from some elaborate, aloof place to some place that we could relate to on a personal basis. So that was a good thing in my mind.
Now, since they are not sacrifices, we created, Dawn, another thing. What do we do in synagogues?
What do you mean, what are we supposed to do? You know,
We do what?
what we're supposed to do or what we actually do? We're supposed to pray.
We're supposed to.
Yeah.
If you want. I mean, no one knows what's in your head when you sit there.
I'm with Gail. As long as we don't sacrifice animals, I'm good.
Yeah, me too.
So what do we do instead of those sacrifices?
We talk.
What do we talk, Ruth Ann? If service, let's say, not before.
Basically, we talk. We speak I would say prescription, but I'm not sure that's the right word, of just a formula that has been passed down from generation to generation for thousands and thousands of years. And that's what we do. I mean, it's the same thing over and over and over again.
So what's that thing that we do?
Respect God. Show respect to God.
Larry?
Okay.
Larry?
When we started out with the opening prayer, we study Torah, and that's one of the highest mitzvahs of all.
Okay, that's one. And what we do even before study Torah, this time I did it.
Pray.
Pray. Okay? In those days, there was no prayer. You came there, you sacrificed, and the chief rabbi, which was the chief, what was it? Help me out. The Kohen Gadol, the higher priest. He did the things, he poured don't listen, Gail. He poured the blood of the animals, he really poured it and did things with those animals. And the animals were food for the Levites because they didn't have anything. So the prayer came instead of the sacrifice. And you're right, Ruth Ann, we created a formula. And I'll tell you personally, this is personally, your rabbi might think differently. Personally, I don't like that formula. Because for me, it doesn't come from my heart. If I just read the formula, okay, it's a prayer, I'll do it. So there is an issue that we call the kavanah, what comes from your heart, and the regular behavior. So the formula is what we need to do on a daily basis. You don't wake up in the morning and pray. You pray on Shabbat, fine. But it needs to come from inside. So, Michael, when I go to the desert, or I go to the forest, and I pray to God, God, please stop the wars. I'm just cannot take it anymore. It comes from my heart, and it's not a formula. And both of them are prayers. I find very difficult, very, very difficult in the formula of the Bet Knesset, of the synagogue. But that's me.
But yet, Mary, I mean, isn't it the formula of the prayer that actually kept the Jewish people together since the destruction of the temple? And the fact that you need a minyan, I mean, to get together to do this prayer required Jews to actually get together, to find themselves, to get married, to, you know, I mean, if everybody just went out into the desert or the forest or whatever and did their own thing, the Jewish people would have disappeared ages and ages and ages ago.
You are absolutely right. The problem with that formula is that every rabbi that feels that he is a big shot adds some more and doesn't remove anything. So that's the issue. It was created, you're absolutely right, as a common denominator. If you go to another synagogue at the end of the world, you're going to probably hear the same prayer that you do in your synagogue, with a little twist perhaps, maybe some other music or so forth. And you're right, it kept us together. And that's what the rabbi said, that you need to combine those formulas on regular basis, but you need to think about it from your heart. It needs to be combined. And you're absolutely right. As Gail will probably will say, when you do meditation, you have to, I find it difficult, you have to do it day by day. The word that I wanted is habit, until it becomes a habit, and then it's combined with your own prayer.
Okay, I think Gail had her hand.
Yeah. The reason meditation is difficult, though, Mary, is because we have to let down all our defenses and just let whatever is coming in come in and go. And that's the hard part. It's not putting up a block to do. And the other thing I want to say was, as far as prayer goes, I have a difficulty with it too, the formula-related prayer. But, and I'm not sure what my definition of God really is, or whether, you know, everybody has their own ideas about that. But when I look at a tree, or the sky, or a mountain, or another person, if God created everything, everything is a gift. And we don't appreciate the gifts that are there. That's why, and we're destroying our world, which I think is, you know, it's like throwing the gift back at the giver. But to me, appreciating the gifts that are here for it, that were created here, is really the most important thing. In other words, giving thanks and being content with what you have. That to me is more a better form of prayer than a formula prayer.
Okay, Amy, and then Michael.
I would like to suggest that the Jews are still offering sacrifices, but perhaps in a different way than they did originally when there were temples. Because I know with our temple, we're donating pajamas, we're donating food, we're giving gifts of money, we're helping people in need. And sometimes we'll sacrifice a portion of our own income or a portion of our time for mitzvah day. But there's various different things constantly going on within our temple that to me are maybe gentle sacrifices, but they're sacrifices. You're giving up something that is dear to you to better the world around you.
Okay, Michael and then Dawn.
I have to relate that didn't intend to say this was but talking about where to pray. I had a boat in Marina del Rey, California, and it was such a spiritual place for me, the water, and I found myself just when I just would go down there and I would just look up and start praying. It was such an amazing feeling that I got. And so this is just an example that I'm sharing with you to demonstrate, at least for myself, not with a group, not being in a synagogue, but being in a particular place that just was very spiritual for me, for whatever reason. And it was just a wonderful feeling. And I just prayed a lot, almost all the time. I went down there, and no matter when it was, it could have been a beautiful, bright summer day. It could have been during the winter and a cloudy day, or when the fog was rolling in. It was just remarkable. And so I really wanted to share that, especially with Rabbi Miri.
Okay, Dawn.
Yeah, we're studying the part of the Torah now where the commandments are given, and God gives us these commandments. They're very precise. They're very exact. They tell us what we can do and what we can't do, and somehow that's all changed now because we don't do a lot. We don't obey most of those commandments. And as Amy said, well, we don't sacrifice animals now. We have other ways of sacrificing. So my question is, when did God excuse us from obeying his commandments? I don't see anything that we're reading now where he has told us as events change, then, we're going to give you, I'm going to cut you some slack. You don't have to do all these. It seems like we just don't. We don't obey those commandments anymore. It's fortunate because we certainly don't kill people for adultery, stone them to death, and so we like to think we're more civilized. But God never gave his permission for us to change, that I can see. So I'm looking to anybody's input on that.
Amy?
I think to answer Don's question, some of that was enforced upon the Jews. With the fall of the Second Temple, there was no place to offer sacrifices. So I think the nature of how we worship and how we carry on was not necessarily permission from God or dictated from God, but rather by circumstances that we found ourselves in.
Well, circumstances are what you have to push back against to retain your Jewishness. So my question is, will circumstances allow us to disobey all the commandments eventually?
No, not.
Well, which ones? Which ones can we disobey?
Are you
It's
really?
very,
Are you really?
okay, sorry.
Or are you just not doing them? There's a difference.
Difference between what?
Say, are you disobeying, or are you actually just not doing them? You're neglecting some of those.
Well, same thing in my mind.
Well, not really.
We don't do them, we're disobeying them.
I'm not sure that.
Okay. Okay, Don, you have a valid question, of course. Should we obey everything that's written by the word that it's written literally, or we can interpret it? Now, and this is a question I'm going to ask now, and we discussed that at the time that I work with Green Valley. Who maintained the life of Jews? The Orthodox, who think, and they just think, that they obey every single word, or the Reforms that keep with time and change things like, and I'm going to talk as a female rabbi, I mean, I want to pray with my family together. That wasn't written, it was separated, the rabbi separated, the Talmud separated. But the times are different, and the value of a woman is exactly, I would say more, but exactly like men. So why wouldn't I sit with my husband? And why I would not touch the Torah? And why I won't have a bat or bar mitzvah? And why do I have to sleep? Well, you know, if you do, you don't. When I menstruate, my husband cannot just go to bed with me, but he cannot touch me. He cannot touch things that I'm holding because that's impurity. So you see, there are notions, and I think that Amy hit it on the head. Because she said there's no temple to sacrifice. If you sacrifice in the temple and there is no temple, you don't sacrifice. You cannot sacrifice because it related to a special circumstance. Now, the question that I ask you about women here, so what do we need to do?
Well, I get all that, Rabbi Mary. My question was, where in the Torah does God tell us that we can adapt his commandments as necessary? Or that was my question. Or do we just take it on ourselves to do that?
I'll tell you what, I buy into the Torah is life. And you say that when you take the Torah in or not. Let me remember the words. Torah is chaim, is life. And we say that. Now you tell me what life is.
Me?
The tree of life.
What is life?
Well, there's one definition, there's a couple of definitions, but metaphorically, if the Torah is life, that the Torah is the source of our humanity, basically. I mean, to me, that's what it is. But it's also, I mean, I marvel at the fact that scribes hand copied the Torah for over 1,000 years, you know, character by
Less
character.
than that, but they did. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to me, that's the biggest indication of the value to us, is that we didn't have Xerox machines back then. And even now, you know, it's hand copied by qualified rabbis. So to me, that's evidence for the Torah is life, because we worship so much what's in the Torah, which brings me back to my question. We worship it so much, so where do we get permission not to follow it?
Okay. Larry, you wanted to say something?
Okay, we have it is a tree of life for those who hold it fast and all who follow it, find happiness, something like that. But to answer Don's question, I'm thinking of the Passover Haggadah. We have hundreds of versions where different interpretations. In our Constitution, we have amendments. For the Torah, we have the commentaries. And I think that's a way of updating it and modern interpretation.
Okay. Gail, you had your hand up before.
Okay, instead of translation interpretation, which you are absolutely right, Larry, we created a literature of 6 books that do that kind of interpretation, ask questions, bring resolutions. What do we call it? That the rabbis did.
The Talmud.
Talmud.
Yeah.
Right. The Talmud is 6 Sidrei Mishnah. Yeah, 6 books of Talmud. And each one addresses every topic in the Torah. Because the Torah is not very clear what it means. So the rabbis felt that it's not clear to them, or what questions should you do? Or how should you slaughter the animals? Or how should you do the planting? And how should you dress? And how should you relate to your wife? And how will you bury your dead? You know, all these things were incorporated in the Talmud. Now the Talmud is, it cannot be changed, it's canonized. So you cannot add to it. So what we have now is that if you have a question, you send a letter to one of the top rabbis that exist now. Or you can consult with your rabbi if you want about this thing. Like, am I allowed to listen to the voice of women from a CD? Well, they were not CD then, so what do you do? Because you are not allowed in the Bet Knesset in the all day, because it says that the voice of women is sexual. And it's going to disturb the man from praying. So you ask now the question, okay, that's what you want. Well, I don't accept it. That's Miri. But there are new circumstances. And I'm going back to Amy's comment. There are circumstances to do certain things that the Torah explains. And the rabbis who were so smart, I cannot even think of how can I ever be like them, try to resolve. Because Torah is life, and life moves. You are not the same that your ancestors were collecting. No, you were hunting and I was collecting. I was gathering. We're not there. We are not there. And then, yeah.
I mean, Mary, if anything, I would say in answer to Dawn's question, it's not a problem with the Torah. The problem is with the Talmud. Okay, the Torah is life, but the Talmud is as interpretations of the Torah, it should never have been finalized. Okay, it's what is not life. It needs to change as life changes. And I think that's part of the problem with the Orthodox, that they are still living in the past too much. As medical science, as science in general, as life in general evolved, the Talmud did not evolve. I mean, some of the precepts that are in the Talmud as an Orthodox woman are actually very liberating. Okay, if you know, we would go up in the balcony, the men were downstairs praying, and we were upstairs kibitzing. I mean, we were having a social hour. You know, Saturday mornings, for a lot of my Orthodox friends, that was their the time that they could take a long, luxurious bath because daddy took the kids to the synagogue, okay? They had their free time. They didn't have to cook, they didn't have to clean. So it could have been a very liberating time. But my thing still is, it's not the Torah that's the problem, it's the Talmud.
Well, the Talmud is a problem to us with the additions that we have in our society. As I say, we don't have CDs. Now, let me give you an example that for me, it's very, very strong. As I mentioned before, a person who's alive, according to our tradition, Talmud, and that evolved from the Torah, is if the heart stop beating, right? What other death now with scientific knowledge we know? The death of the brain. When the brain dies, now, you know, you can put this tube and that tube and that tube and maintain a person forever and ever. Don't do that to me. That's something that happened and relatively recently. This kid was about to have bar mitzvah and he lived in New York. And he was visiting relatives, let's say in Pennsylvania. And he had a car accident. And he was taken to the hospital and his brain was dead. And as we know, we can maintain the body functioning even if the brain is dead. So time passed, and the family, who was very orthodox, didn't want to unplug, what I call in a crude way, the kid, because he had to have bar mitzvah. So, you know, according to science, the kid was dead. According to my view, the kid was dead. And I don't know how you think about it. We are not going to make a poll about it. But this is a thing that, you know, in the old days, you are alive if your heart beat and you can breathe. Yeah, he could breathe. The machine made him breathe. The heart was attached to whatever and beat. Is that life? For them it was, because they still held the issue of, look, the heart is beating and the kid is breathing. So this is an example that we cannot hold what was decided neither in the Torah nor in the Talmud, because things have changed. We have changed. Society has changed. The wars never change, but in general, we live in a different place, socially, scientifically, I would say everything.
Don?
I'm sorry, I have to leave a little early this morning, but I just want to apologize for my usual aggressive questions and just to say how much I enjoy being part of this wonderful, wise group. So,
Me too.
I just have a question before you leave. So in order,
If you leave, just 1 second, Gail. If you leave, I appreciate very, very much your questions and your doubts and your not accepting, because that's what Rabbi did. So you are as good as any rabbi.
oh, really? So can I practice?
You just need to be ordained. That's all.
Okay.
And that's a new thing.
Okay. Thank you all.
Don, I just have a quick question for you. So you're saying we're disobeying, correct? By not doing these things. So how would we correct that and obey? We'd have to build another temple? Is that would be the only way we could, isn't it?
If we were to abide by the letter of the law and say God is the supreme commander, then yeah, we have to do all of that. But but I do understand that we can't do all of that, and I'm just trying to understand where we can soften those very harsh commandments. I mean, this is a tribe out in the middle of the desert, and just forming an entire new religion. And so, sure, conditions were different, but I'm just trying to study the Torah. I'm trying to find out, okay, where is there some wiggle room that allows us to do what we're doing now? I guess the Talmud is one channel, and Mishnahs, there are other channels that evolved. I realize that, but I'm just looking in the very heart of the Torah, where God might have given us some leeway to say, okay, here's the way it is now, because of conditions, because you're in survival mode, because you need to build an ethical and moral life now, but later on. Anyway, I'll stop blabbing because I'm late for an appointment. But
Okay, Don, you say where in the Torah?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, Abraham argues with God, particularly.
yes, it does. Yeah.
So there is precedent. We are given a brain to use to ask questions.
Yeah.
In Reconstructionists, their Haggadah is a book of questions, and we are encouraged to question, and that's how we learn, we grow, why we have rabbis to help us find the answers.
Right. Okay, yeah, but I do have to go, but I'm just wondering where to look in the Torah where that digression can be found, if there is one. So anyway, good Shabbos, everybody.
Good
Thanks so much.
I absolutely understand. I'll tell you just one word. I'm a very holistic person. I look more like that than to each detail. So you could understand how I see the Torah as a teaching, because the word is teaching, what the essence of what it's teaching us.
Right.
Is it that not eat shrimps or is beyond that? But as I said, Don, you seem to me very systematic and very detail oriented, and that kind of things bothers you. It bothers the rabbis in the Talmud, and still it does. So I absolutely accept your contentions and questions, and that's what made us, as Michael said, what is not here. I don't know if he can hear us. Jews, we question, and we question.
Okay,
So
well,
thank you for.
thank you.
Okay, Shabbat
Good
Shalom. We'll
talk.
see you next
Shabbat
week.
shalom.
Okay, are we ready to
Can we
move
move
on to the next
Yeah.
sentence, or are we going to continue?
Absolutely. As far as I'm concerned,
I want to thank everybody because you made my job very, very easy today. We read one small section and took us an hour and a half to go over it.
Yeah.
Because like I said before, I have my own thoughts, and when I read over other people's commentary, I read it, okay, that's somebody else's commentary, and and it doesn't really pertain to me. But kind of in answer to Dawn's question, I was just thinking of this. At the end of the Torah, I mean, whatever was, God didn't tell us to go back and live the way Abraham did. There was already a progression of life, how life was being given. There was already more technology. I mean, I wonder if in Abraham's day they would have been able to do everything that they were able to do in Moses's day. I don't know. I mean, we didn't live back there, but maybe if you look at that, and the fact that the Torah just stopped, but maybe it's already showing that God expected people to be able to move on, to progress, to change. And that's why we don't have to go back to living like Abraham did. That's just came to me. Okay, somebody want to read 25:10? And again, you read it, Grace?
Yes,
Okay, and
can you
then
hear
just,
me?
yeah, and then just read, till you think you have something that you would like to discuss.
Okay.
When you said you, did you address Grace or did you address all of us when we
whole
have
group.
something? Or
And
just
the
when Grace?
whole group, because
Aha,
we're having a
okay.
discussion. I mean, we're having a discussion just like
Absolutely.
then I look at any other place where they'd be discussing Torah and Talmud and whatever. I mean, that's what we're doing when we argue it out and we leave as friends, and that's the best part, that we leave as friends and we can all have our own interpretations.
Absolutely. And it says, and God dwells where two people are studying. So imagine when we're studying in such a large group. Okay, go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. They shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Overlay it with pure gold, overlay it inside and out, and make upon it a gold molding round about. Cast 4 gold rings for it to be attached to its 4 feet, 2 rings on one of its side walls and 2 on the other. Make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Then insert the poles into the rings on the side walls of the ark for carrying the ark. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be removed from it. And deposit in the ark the tablets of the pact which I will give you. I'd like to stop there because that was a lot about, what it's supposed to look like and how it's supposed to be carried, and do not lay it. And so there's a lot of law here. There's a lot of, my goodness. And now when we open the ark, it's double doors and it's wooden and it's stays put and it's not transient. Well, this looks as though, it's designed to be carried with them at all times, wherever the tent of meeting will progress. So I think there's a lot in here that talks about progression, where we're going to progress, where we're going to evolve. And there's just a lot here. So I think I'd like to stop and see what others have to say.
Gail?
I think the part I kind of like or think about is that everybody has something that they can contribute in the way of a skill or an item or something so you can look at it and say, okay, I helped build that thing, whatever it is. My only question though, Mary, is how important is it for us to spend a lot of time on all this detail about the building of the ark? Do we tend to get bogged down in details, or is that important that we do that?
What do you think?
Some years it's okay, and some years I'm going, oh, can we move on? So I have mixed emotions about it. I'm just not sure that there's not a lot of room for discussion, I guess, on things.
Marcia?
Maybe we could look at it as what importance is this, what they did to us today? I mean, that they built a place to do sacrifice. We're not doing that. They built a place that the rabbi went, or the leader went into a separate room. We have our leader in front of us. So maybe if we just read and look at where it is today.
Michael?
Now, this is the specific way to build the ark is these specific things that are coming from God, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, I think he's demonstrating that that he's in charge of what is supposed to be as far as this ark is concerned with, and it's about obeying his I see it as a command because it's very, very important to him, and to see that the people will obey him.
But do we need, Gail questions if we need all these details. You put this here, you put it there. She feels that what can't we skip all that?
What?
Can we skip all that? I mean, what's the point on telling you this detail and this detail and this detail?
No, I don't think it can be dismissed.
Why? Why don't you think?
Because if God is dictating, that would be enough. Not you can't dismiss God's word, what he's requesting.
My question is, how much, what exactly can you discuss about it? I mean, you can read it, and I get that part. Okay, we can read it. But is there any room for discussion about some of these details?
Larry?
Okay, the editors of the Torah put enormous emphasis on the building of the tabernacle. I think it actually covers more verses than almost anything else. And not only how to do it, but the materials that required, the use of pure gold. Now, we know, okay, it's $2,000 an ounce now, maybe, but I'm sure it was really a valuable commodity then. And in a way, it's asking for the people to have a stake in the outcome. If you're invested in it, literally, figuratively, by sacrifice, by hard work, by monetary, it becomes much more important to you.
Yeah, that's
Well
interesting
said.
because we have not read it yet, but okay, tell me, I'll tell you a quick story about this, is that I was teaching a kid for bar mitzvah. Now, the kid had a lot of trouble to concentrate, to write, and so forth. So I decided, instead of helping him write the speech that it was very difficult for him, I said, you know what? Why don't you build the tabernacle, you know, as a what do we call it? You know, just a model of the tabernacle, following the instructions that were read here. So I got very involved into that, the colors, because we have not gotten there, you know, the colors that you put here, the colors you put there, how you wrap the menorah, and a lot of stuff. And what it is, and you were mentioning, how do I have part in it, on top of everyone working on it and donating money for it? Every tribe has another job. This tribe is going to put the posts. This tribe is going to make those poles that you schlep it with. And it looks like what do you call it when a person is injured and you carry him?
Stretcher?
A what?
Litter.
A stretcher. Right,
Stretcher
it's
litter.
like a stretcher that you have to carry. And those poles have to be inserted in certain places. These are the rings that he's talking about. And you're right, Larry. It's very, very important, obviously, in this part of the story, and every detail is important. I might agree with Gail. Okay, let's read it, and it's not much to discuss. As you know, Don would be here. He would say, "Well, every detail counts." You know.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I don't want to study it or discuss. I'm just asking you
No, it's
if we really, is it still important to us? And it's just a question. I don't have a final decision.
okay. Okay. Grace?
Thank you. I didn't mean to downsize what we use today compared to what is being laid out here by God. I think the euphemism is that the importance of it being so refined and so beautiful and so holy of holy that we learn to appreciate God in that light.
Yeah.
And that the ark has, significance. And if they're going to this much, distinction at this point in time in our Torah, way back when, then, keeping that traditionally, we've evolved. Traditionally, it's still a very holy of holy place in our synagogue, where the bima, behind the bima, and how we handle the tablets, right? Because that's what's coming up here next is, I will create a pact for you of the tablets. And so it's where we're going to put, our Torah is going to be withheld inside this ark. That's the significance in all of it, I feel. I just didn't mean to downsize what we do today compared to because I made a comment about that. But it's changed, it's evolved, and we don't use gold. I think every synagogue in the nation would be, traumatized by thieves and robbers and all kinds of, terrible stuff if we had, gold inlay everywhere, or, an ark that was covered in gold. I can see that could be very problematic.
I wonder if it's possible that it's a test to see if we were willing to follow God's instruction to the letter.
Maybe.
Could be, yeah. Why not? Sure, why not?
But, now, you travel all over the United States and the world, and you saw synagogues. I mean, I can send you an email some pictures of synagogues. And even in the country, people put so much money into those buildings. And Grace, you're right. Maybe it's the more fancy we do it and the more we put there, the more we glorify God, or we stand towards God, and we don't make a schmate thing, although that's enough, but we try to modify that. And then what the Christians have done is, I'll tell you, those cathedrals are just amazing. Not only that, but wherever they built it, they make sure that the tower is above everything else. I mean, in New York, it doesn't work, but in all the villages and the cities of those days, that was very important. So the importance is, God is here, and I'm going to glorify, and I'm going to do the best I can to show how much I appreciate. Maybe, and maybe, Michael, you're right to check if we're going to do and follow what it says.
You know, and the Orthodox, as far as I know, Rabbi Miri, Orthodox synagogues are very plain because the focus is, the way I understand it, that Orthodox synagogues are plain because the focus is not the synagogue, the focus is on God. And there's not supposed to be anything fancy to take your eye off the object of praying to God. And that's what I had learned from the Orthodox. Now the conservative and the Reform is quite a different story. However, the Orthodox, as I say, that I remember plenty of Orthodox synagogues in New York City that were just very small, plain places of worship.
No, Michael, no, I disagree. I think if you're talking
That's
about
okay.
a storefront synagogue, yes, those are tended to be very plain. But when they built buildings, no, they definitely were not plain. I mean, they had beautiful stained glass windows, the wood in there, the carvings on the wood, the arcs. I mean, everything was, it was fancy. Everything was. I don't know whether you would call it fancy, but there was definitely beauty in a lot of this. Yeah.
Well,
Marsha, hold on, Michael. Marsha, did you grow up in an Orthodox background, I believe? Not, am I right?
Say it again.
That your growing up was in an Orthodox background of your parents, grandparents?
I grew up in a conservative synagogue, but the conservative synagogue had, it was on the second floor. There was the elevator that went all the time. It had beautiful things in it, but it also had very important rabbis that we were very fortunate to live with. But they would have laughed at me if they saw me today in the taluses that I have woven, because I wanted to feel that I had given something of myself to the building. And I was so fortunate to learn how to do that.
Well, thank you.
One last minute. I'm so happy that I was here today to listen and to contribute a little bit. But I have to go because I have to meet somebody in 10 minutes. So I'm sorry, but I hope that I can come again. Thank you.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Pajamas.
Michael, even at Chafetz Chaim in town, in Tucson with Rabbi Becker, they not now, they found someone to contribute enough money to put stained glasses in the windows. It's to beautify the mitzvah. It's like on Shabbat, we put the best clothing, the best tablecloths, the best dishes. It's to beautify the mitzvah. That's what we call it.
Well, I think there are there's different opinions. I don't see one opinion right or one opinion wrong.
Absolutely.
You see,
absolutely.
And so what I was told as a child, that the Orthodox synagogue is to be plain, and it's because there should be nothing taken away from the the praying to God. And this goes along, and I don't believe it, but that goes along with the separation of men and women. You're supposed to not think about the other sex, just the praying of God. And so this is what I was taught and learned. And as far as Ruth Ann, you're right, because my actual bar mitzvah took place in the Bronx Jewish Center, which I believe was it might have been Orthodox, but it was a fancy place.
Mhm.
So there's different opinions. It's somewhat confusing, and I don't think one opinion is wrong over the other. I think they just have both valid points that you can't really argue with. There's different opinions.
Mhm. Larry, you want to say something?
I think one of the earliest synagogues on this continent had dirt floors. It was very basic. But for
Yes,
those
yes.
synagogues where they build magnificent structures, we call that the edifice complex.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and we also beautified the Torah itself, you know, Michael. Even in the Orthodox, we put this keter, this fancy silver with little
Mhm.
bells. Yeah, yeah,
We have them. We
yeah.
have it at Beth Sholem. We just don't use
There
them,
you
but they're in there. They
Yeah,
could,
yeah.
if somebody wants to polish some silver, they could sure use a good polishing. Because I was looking at them yesterday. Yeah, but yeah, we have them.
Yeah, it's as I said, we call it beautify the mitzvah. You know, there's no need when people were very, very poor and had only one set of dishes. That's what they put on Shabbat or on the holidays. I had about 3 sets of dishes. And without being orthodox, I kept one. I said, this is going to be for Pesach. Why? I don't know. But they look Pesach. They were white with a silver thingy. Yeah. And Gail, I don't know why it's there. But as Michael said, well, it's the word of God. Whatever is in the Torah, we should not move right or left from what's written. And the issue is what we are doing now. It's trying to see what, because I'm very, very adamant that life is something that is living, and it has to touch us. And if it doesn't touch us, what's the relevance? You know, why are we doing things if they're not relevant to us? So, but that's my view, Michael. As you said, different people feel differently, and everything is acceptable.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, according to the official clock here on the computer, it's 11:53. Instead of reading anything else that we're not going to have time to discuss, how about if we just stop here? And thankfully, Marty will be back next week.
You did fine, Ruth Ann.
And
Very, very well done, Ruth Ann.
Thank
Everyone,
you.
Yes.
A great job.
Yeah,
thank you.
so, I
Thank
mean,
you.
otherwise, I'm going through what we have to go for the month of November. We've got a service next Friday night, which I hope everybody can attend. It will be streamed. And then the rabbi goes to Israel. Sisterhood Shabbat, and I really want to thank the Sisterhood for stepping in, will be on November 18th. And unfortunately, I won't be there because I'll be in Pittsburgh helping my daughter recuperate from her surgery. And and I'll be honest, there may or may not be a bagel breakfast in November. With Ricky being under the weather, although she's home from the hospital, she's doing quite well.
Good.
I was kind of surprised she wasn't on today, because I was over her place yesterday. I got her one of those little potty chairs, from the Friends Indeed, and she's using that for her laptop. So I thought she would be on today because she's all set up. I mean, raring to go, but she's doing okay. Her biggest problem is, and I can't remember what it's called. She has very poor circulation in her fingertips, so they weren't able to get an accurate oxygen reading in her blood. So they sent her home without supplemental oxygen. And it's become very, very obvious because she says she gets out of breath just walking from her couch to her bathroom. And she lives in an park model, a mobile home type thing, which is very, very small. And that alone concerns me. So she needs more oxygen. So maybe that's why she's not on.
I just want to
Yep.
say thank you again, Ruth Ann, for everything, not just today, but for everything you do for the temple. It's much appreciated, really.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Well,
And Mary, thank you for
Absolutely.
leading the class today. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah,
You were
thank you.
very welcome. I always enjoy participating.
yeah, Mary, I definitely thank you because, like I said, I mean, we would have muddled through it, but it was so much better having you.
Yes.
Well, you're doing so well, Ruth Ann. I live with people that organize this up, so you are the best.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I didn't know half of what I know until I sent my daughter to day school. When you send your kids to an Orthodox day school, boy, do you learn stuff. I think I learned more than she did. But yeah, so you want to talk about Orthodox? Yeah, as a kid, as a girl, didn't have to learn, but as a mother with a child at Orthodox, yes. So it was different. Okay, everybody, it's now 11:57, so we'll see everybody next
Thank
week.
you.
But do come to
Thank
Shabbat.
you.
Okay,
Shalom.
Shabbat
bye,
shalom.
everybody.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.